All right, we're getting started and welcome to my session for the 2021 North Carolina Beginning Teacher Summit. The title of this session is You're More Than a Number, the Stories Behind EVAAS Data. I'm your presenter, Michelle White. I've been teaching in North Carolina for over 10 years now, and I currently serve as a multi-classroom leader. And I've also started my own company. So I'm the CEO and founder of Simplified Educational Solutions, where we offer consulting and coaching for new teachers and new leaders. So I'm really excited to get started with you today. Let's go ahead and begin. So you may have seen this slide in some of your other presentations today, but just remember we are here to work together, learn as much as we can, respect and support each other throughout all of the challenges, and we are going to get started so that we can do this. All right, so before we get into the meat and potatoes of the presentation, I just want to throw this out there. I know that this is a virtual experience, this is pre-recorded, and so I just want to make sure that you are able to get the most out of this workshop. So I've made the slide deck and a participant handout available to you. For my people who are here with me live, I will drop this in the chat for you. And we're doing that. So that's coming to you now. So that first link is to the slide deck. Please remember that when you're using the bit.lys, if you are typing this directly into your web browser, that it is case sensitive. So the YMTAN and the S and the D need to be all capitalized. And then for the second one, we have the participant handout coming to you. And that is in the chat for you as well. So for my people who are watching this during the summit, you can pause this presentation now and go ahead and type those in. Like I said, in order to fully engage, this is like a really hands-on presentation. I'm not going to be talking at you. So I really want you to make sure that you have access to that. All right. Digna and Joy, are you ready? All right, we're good. Also, if you're more of a paper pencil person, feel free to just have something to write with and write on as we go through this. All right, so for today's agenda, by the end of today's session, you'll be able to answer the following questions. Question one is, what is EVAAS? I know that's why you're here, because you saw that in the title. Question two, how can I find my students' past and projected test scores? And question three, how can I support my students in meeting their goal? So this presentation is broken down into 3 parts. As you will see on your participant handout, we are going to address all 3 of these questions, and you have space to take notes as we go along. There are also some links in there. So once I get to that portion of the presentation, I'll let you know when we can dig deeper into those different resources. All right, so question 1, what is EVAAS? So EVAAS, of course, is an acronym, because in education, we love a good acronym. EVAAS stands for Education Value Added Assessment System. You may also hear it referred to as SAS. SAS stands for Statistical Analysis System. Okay, so 3 things that we need to know about EVAAS. What is EVAAS used for? So the first thing is it is definitely used as a big portion of the school accountability measures. Then we use this actually at the school level as part of our school improvement plan. We use this in different PLCs for our data-driven instruction when we're comparing how our students are doing day to day to where they need to be at the end of the course or grade level. And then we use this for master scheduling, because if we look at where our teachers are in terms of how they're pushing students, their growth and everything, we like to make sure that in those tested subjects that we are scheduling teachers that have the most growth. or who have the history of the most growth. For the benefits of EVAAS, it allows us to pinpoint who needs support. And so that goes for our teachers as well as our students. And we'll get into that in our next portion so that we can see how we can support our students. Another benefit is that it allows us to see past student performance. So it starts at as early as 3rd grade. I don't know which level of educator you are now, but EVAAS is for K through 12. Most, I don't know if private schools use this, but if you are involved in North Carolina in any way, you have access to EVAAS. So definitely our public schools and our charter schools, you will use this. And then also it allows us to predict future performance. And we'll see all the different ways that we can predict future performance on not only our tested area, but it's also available for other tests as well. Then I would be remiss if I didn't give you a full picture, both sides of what's happening with EVAAS. I know there are a lot of people, especially now, that have a certain feeling about standardized testing. I won't necessarily share my viewpoint on that, but I will say that wherever you stand with your beliefs on standardized testing, the data is still useful. But one of the big criticisms is that when we're looking at our school performance grades, it's heavily weighted on student achievement rather than growth. And then achievement we've seen is that it's strongly correlated to socioeconomic status. So if we are in a school where we have a high concentration of students coming to us from poverty, then there is a strong correlation that tells us that, of course, they will be also underperforming. But like I said, wherever you stand, as far as standardized testing, we can still use this data, and I will show you how. All right, so EVAAS is coming to us from value added. There's a lot of research about the value added methodologies. I've linked that into your further reading resources in your participant handout. So if you're interested in looking more into value added, feel free to read that later. But it tells us how much of a positive or negative effect individual teachers have on student learning in a given school year. So that just means, has a student benefit from having you as a teacher? That's pretty much all it's looking at. And of course, with the SAS system, a lot of the how behind how these things are calculated is under lock and key. Not a lot of people know what goes into all the different algorithms. However, the purpose of value added is so that it's taking all of the other outside factors that would influence a student's ability to achieve at high levels, and just isolating the one variable of how the teacher impacts their achievement. So there's about 10 variables that have been approximated, but only one of those variables deals with the teacher impact, and that's about a weight of 10%. So if you see here on the screen, this screenshot is what you will see once you log into your EVAAS system. This is just general, the growth indicators. So you would either be red, green, or blue. So red just means it does not meet the expected growth. And so that would be an index of -3. Again, if you're interested to learn about what all these numbers mean, reach out to me. We can have a separate conversation. I don't want to go into the rabbit hole of all the math behind this. I just want you to see we have 3 colors. So you'll be either red, green, or blue. If you're in the green area, you have met expected growth, either moderate but not significant. So depending on if you're right there in the middle where you have that like the middle shade of green, and then if you get to the darker shade of green, that means you have a moderate but not significant evidence that the school's students made more growth than expected, but not necessarily gotten to the point where the large percentage of your students have exceeded growth. So when you get to that portion, that's when you get to blue. And so again, a lot of this is under lock and key. And so once you see that you have a year's worth of data, I know we have a lot of our first year teachers. I have one of my participants here who is a first year teacher. So at the end of this school year, when all of the EVAAS is released, you'll get a bigger picture of what happened for that school year. All right, are there any questions? Feel free to come off mute or you make a comment.
I was just about to ask you if you wanted us to say our questions, but yes, I did have one. It was an odd question. So you did say that this is for all grade levels, and it is a combination of different things, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and it's just a formula that they put together. Is, I mean, what kind of things go into it?
So I'll say that we know that in our experience, there's a lot of things that will factor into a student's ability to achieve or whatever their achievement level is. So the one variable is the teacher impact, but the other ones deal with demographic factors. So one of them may be like the students, the parents' education level, if they graduated from college, if there is a father present in the home, things like that, that you have absolutely no control over, which is why they want to eliminate and isolate all of those other factors and focus on how much of an impact is the teacher making from year to year.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right. So now we need to define achievement versus growth, because there is definitely a huge difference, okay? So achievement is measured by one test for that particular content area. So measured by one test and compares all of the students taking that test in that particular school year. And so the achievement levels may change from year to year depending on which test they're taking, because like I said, they're looking at how all the students taking that particular test that year are doing compared to each other. So again, it's just telling us what a student knows from that particular grade level or content area. Then we look at growth. So the growth is what we want to definitely focus on and where we have the most room for creativity and the most push. So this is measured by multiple tests. Like I said, it's starting from third grade, and it compares how a student is doing compared to themselves based on how they performed since the previous year. So achievement is compared to all students. Growth is just focused on that one student. So again, it's just telling us how much a student has learned since last year. Now this 80-20, this is where I was talking about how the achievement and growth are factored into our school performance grades. So a part of our school performance grade, they're taking the achievement, but that weighs 80%. And then the growth is only 20%. And so that's where that argument is coming from, the criticism. If we are looking at both of these things, then why is one weighted heavier, more heavy than the other, basically? Okay, are any questions about this one? Nope, okay. All right, okay. So question 2, how can I find my students' past and projected test scores? This is the portion where you want to make sure that you are logged into your NC Ed Cloud. So if you have not already done that, let's go ahead and do that now. Okay, so step 1, let me know when you are ready and you are at this screen where you see all of your icons. Just give me a thumbs up when you're ready to go. All right. So there are two ways where we can access our students' test scores. The first one is through PowerTeacher. And so you'll see here on the right, that's the one that we're going to go through first. And then we'll go through the steps for you to access it through the SAS EVAAS system. All right, so let's go ahead and click on PowerTeacher. And once that pulls up, you will click on the PowerTeacher Pro navigation menu on the side. That'll be your first selection there on the left. Okay, so this will take you to your gradebook. If you don't teach a class, for one of my participants here, if you don't teach a class, you will not have any classes loaded. But for my teachers who are in the classroom, this will take you to your gradebook, and then you will need to select which block of students that you would like to access scores for. So once I click on PowerTeacher Pro, my next step is to go to the students icon on your navigation menu there on the left. So you'll go to students, and then you'll see all these different options. If you have never taken time to go through all of this, I encourage you to do that so that you will know the ins and outs of what PowerTeacher is capable of doing. But today we're going to look at the test scores option. So if you need to scroll down, you'll see test scores is towards the bottom. Okay. And then you'll be able to choose the name of the individual student whose scores you wish to see. All right. So once you click on a student, this is how your screen should look. Digna, is this how yours looks? Yes, okay. All right. So you should be able to scroll down. For this particular student, we had data dating back since 3rd grade. So what you want to take a look at is the score name. So you'll see their achievement level and then the actual percentile. Those are the two things that will give you the most insight. Okay, so like for this student's achievement level in 3rd grade, they scored a level 4 on reading. Oh no, that's math. Yep. So that's math. They scored a level 4. And so their percentile for math was a 68. So you can just take a look at that. Again, if you have access to PowerSchool and you are a classroom teacher, you should be able to see all of your students. Okay. One special note is that the data from our 2019-2020 school year is incomplete due to COVID. All right. So moving on. Now let's go back to our step 1. You can go back out to the cloud. Now I'm going to show you how to access the scores through the SAS EVAAS system. All right. So once you get logged into SAS, this should be a single sign-on effort. So you shouldn't have had to log in with a username or password. Digna, let me know if you were able to get into the screen.
Yes, I was able to just by clicking it.
Perfect. Okay. So you will need to hover over reports. Okay. And so you should see a screen similar to this. And there are 2 types of reports that we're going to focus on today. The first one is going to be the projection summary. That's going to be under the school reports menu. And then we're going to focus on the custom student reports under the student reports menu. Okay, so the first one we're going to click on is the projection summaries. Okay, when you get to the projection summary, you'll be able to tell which of the different score tests you want to see. But for this one, I chose the EOC Math 1 level 3. So this report provides a summary of the projections for all the students enrolled in that particular grade level or course. Okay, it's giving us at minimum what the students are projected to score or their probability of scoring at a level 3. And the level 3 is the minimum proficiency score for a student on their math on EOC. And level 3 goes across the board for all of our North Carolina end of grade and end of course assessments. The level 3 is the lowest that you can get to be considered proficient. Okay, so taking a look at this screen. So we'll see here at the top, you have it broken down by different groups of probability. So we have those students that are projected to score a level 3 and they have a greater than 70% chance. Then we have those who have between a 40 and a 70% chance of scoring a level 3. Then you have the students who have a probability of less than 40% chance of scoring a level 3. And then you have the students without a projection. So those may be the students who might be transferring from another state or who may have not been associated with our North Carolina system for EVAAS. And then you have the students who are projected to be at or above proficiency. Now for this particular assessment, it may be discouraging to see that a lot of our kids are coming to us below grade level and they don't have a high chance of scoring a 3. However, looking at these particular numbers under the student count column, this is the place where we have the most opportunity for growth. Okay, so that means that if we took these students, it's over 300 students that don't have a high chance of scoring a 3. If we focused our efforts on these students and providing different interventions and support programs, then this is where we have the opportunity to be a blue school where you are getting high growth across the board for that particular content. Okay. So that is your table version. Then below it, you see that we have that in a pie chart for our visual learners. And it has the legend here for the different colors. Okay. Are there any questions here for this screen? Okay. So looking at this from the whole school, you'll see, yes, we have some room there. But now we want to actually see, all right, in that 62% of students who have less than a 40% chance, who are they? So let's get into that. All right. So we want to go to custom student reports. So if you hover back over your reports navigation menu here at the top, you want to select custom student reports. Okay, and we will be able to create a new report. So if you click there, you're going to select that so that you can generate the list of only the students that you teach. So in our last screen, we looked at all of the students enrolled in that particular grade level or content. Now we want to just focus on the kids that you who are under your instruction. Okay, all right, so when you click on that, you should come to a screen that looks like this. Okay, you could take hours out of your day trying to search for every student. However, the easiest way to do this is to keep it on the default setting for currently enrolled in, right here under student search, this drop-down menu. And then you want to select your particular grade. So I'll give you a minute to do that. So in my case, it will be 9th grade. And then I want to go down to the bottom under projected proficiencies. And then whichever course or grade level you teach, you want to select that test. So say for instance, I want an EOC test. So my 9 through 12 teachers, you will select EOC, or it may be a CTE option. If you are K through 8, you want to select the EOG portion. Okay, and then the actual subject. So I want to look for math and level 3. So math 1 and level 3. And then for the lower percentage, again, I'm trying to generate a comprehensive list of all the students that I teach. So I want to see the probability from the lower portion. I'm gonna keep this as 0. And then the upper portion, I want to change that to 100. So this will capture everyone. So again, you want to change the upper portion to 100, leave the lower percentage as 0. Okay, so once you have that entered, then you want to press submit. All right, we're ready. Okay. All right, so again, this is going to give you the list of everyone enrolled in. Again, I chose Math 1. So this is going to give me 5 different pages of students. So if you have your roster, or if you can just think of, if you know the students offhand, then here on the left, you can click on that little checkbox. Okay, so it will be good if you had your roster handy. Make sure you just click on each of the students. Once you are done with that page, you want to click on this button that says add selected students. Okay, and because there are multiple pages, you want to do the same thing for each of those pages. So once you go to page 2, select those students by clicking on the checkbox and make sure that you click the button add selected students. Okay, now just for the purpose of this training, Digna, if you would enjoy, if you have access to it, just click on one student that you know. And then you can add them to your report and play around with it later on. Okay, so that's going to add them, and you will be able to see that under your custom reports when you log back in. It will not lose anything unless you physically delete it yourself. Now we want to access a little bit more information about our particular students. You can do that by clicking on the hyperlinked blue numbers. So either under the probability column or the percentile column to the far right is going to take you to the same report. So either one of those, if you want to find a student that you know, click on their probability. Okay, and once you do that, you should see this screen that comes up with this awesome graph. Yep.
I think that's funny because I remember on some teams I've worked on, these graphs have been available to us, but I never knew how to actually access them myself. So you can create this. This always came kind of to us like, here you go. Just, when we're looking at it as a PLC or as, grade level, we're just like.
I am all about building capacity.
It's good to be able to access that stuff yourself.
Amy, you ready? You have yours up. Okay. All right, so when we get to this screen, this report is going to generate a line graph, and it's going to capture all of the test scores that we have documented for a particular student. So this student did have scores dating back from 3rd grade. And if you hover over each of those data points, so each point on that line, you'll be able to see which school district they were enrolled in, as well as the school. Some of that information is very telling if you've had experience in the school system for some time. Okay. And so we just want to look and see, like, what is this student's trend? So this particular student, they have been on grade level since 3rd grade. They have consistently scored a level 4 for the past several years. Okay. So if you see here, we have the color key, the legend down at the bottom. Okay, so orange is going to be your level 3. That means that they are proficient for that particular course. This purple, I don't know which color is coming up on your screen, but it's like a purplish blue color. That is a level 4. And then the green is the level 5. Okay. So if you actually click on or hover over those different cut scores. Ooh, let me go back. If you click on those different cut scores, those lines, it's going to tell you what percentile a student needs to be to score at that particular achievement level. Okay. All right. And then if you scroll down, you'll see more information in table form. So here in the middle, this table is going to give you the projection or the probability for all 3 levels. So level 3, level 4, and level 5, those would be on or above grade level. Okay. So this student, of course, because they've been hovering in the level 4 area, they have a strong chance of scoring a level 3. If they don't score a level 3, then we know something's wrong, right? So we see that they have a 62.8% chance of scoring a level 4 for the Math 1 EOC, and they have a 10% chance of scoring a level 5. Okay, so because they're projected to score a 78 percentile, that means that you can still push them. And even if they scored maybe like an 80th percentile, they will still have grown and you would meet that growth, right? Our students who are considered our high flyers sometimes are more challenging to grow because they've been doing well forever, right? And so sometimes I know as a beginning teacher, you may not necessarily have the strategies for differentiation for those students who are already got it, right? And so sometimes we tend to have them be the tutors for the other kids. We are going to come up with different ways on how to push them beyond just being our helpers. If you're interested to learn more about that, please contact me. But then if you look down below, we see the testing's history in a table format. So you'll see the actual number of points if you couldn't really read the line graph. Okay. All righty. So one other thing that I want to point out is that we can see the projections for a number of different tests. So if you hover over the menu at the top and you go to projections, you'll see all these different types of tests. So not only do you have the EOG and the EOC projections, but you have national standardized tests such as the PSAT, SAT, ACT, all of that good stuff. Okay. So I know that a lot of our teachers who don't necessarily teach us a tested subject, like a math or a reading, you can still use EVAAS to inform you on some of these other areas. Okay. All right. So question number 3. Let's really get into this. Okay. So how can I support my students in meeting their goal? So we see where they're supposed to be, right? So how can I help them get there? All right, so the stories. Okay, let's take a minute and let's see what stories do these graphs tell. So we have here student A and student B. I just want you to take a moment and just do a quick notice and wonder. So we want to look closely at student A look closely at student B, and then compare the two. Okay, and I'll let you take a moment to do that. And I would love to hear some of your comments, and feel free to come off mute.
I think it's interesting looking at student B, how at first they were kind of going up, and then one year it significantly went down. And then again, the student kind of started to go back into that upward motion, which makes me kind of wonder what happened specifically that year, or what test it was. Rather, student A looks like it's more consistently going into the upward direction.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Although they did have a slight drop in A too. I can't see that year, but that, you know, where that point is.
Mm-hmm. That's 2015, between
Okay.
2015 and 2016. Mm-hmm.
Okay. That makes me kind of think, why was there like a slight drop?
Mm-hmm.
You know, what caused that? And then, you know, still at under a level 3, or just under level 3. That's just kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the same thing, like when you're going through each of your students' different graphs, sometimes you can say, that makes sense. Yep, I can see that. But then when we see all the way dating back, so like for instance, I've looked at some of our 9th graders over the years, there seems to always be a drop when they get to middle school. So 6th through 7th grade, maybe 5th through 6th, there's always some type of drop, especially if they're going from elementary to middle, from middle to high, or if they have changed schools. Okay, so that's something that you definitely want to look at. Again, you can hover over each of those data points and see the district and the school that they were enrolled in for that particular school year. Okay. All right, so now we wonder, like, what happened, right? So that's where this activity will come into play. Before we look at how to address that, we want to take a look at the fact that classroom management for new teachers is sometimes a struggle, right? Digna, you were a part of another presentation that I did where we talked about this. We think about like our students who are struggling and who are normally trending below grade level. A lot of times we witness some misbehaviors, right? Sometimes it's kind of challenging. However, one of the things that I have noticed is that whatever that misbehavior is, the root cause falls into 4 different categories, right? So this first category is attention. They may be doing some attention-seeking behaviors. Those are silly kids who sometimes are like, you need to sit at the front by yourself, right? So how can we ensure that we're providing positive attention for those particular students? And so if you have the slide deck already pulled up, these are hyperlinked to different types of resources. So I will click on this. And so for our attention seeking students, here are 10 ways to build relationships with kids. Okay, so you can take some time after this presentation and really go through this, but make sure that you're not always just addressing them when they are doing something that kind of is annoying, but you want to always just let them know that I see you. A lot of our kids, especially if you're dealing with students in poverty, you don't know what's happening at home. You don't know the type of attention that they're getting. You don't know if they get a chance to talk with an adult all day. I know working in high school, a lot of our kids, a lot of their parents leave in the morning, maybe work multiple jobs or don't come home until late at night, and they really don't have a chance to really interact. And so we are the ones that are with them most of the time. And so they are craving that attention. And sometimes it may come out in negative ways. However, we want to make sure we have some tools in our back pocket to make sure that we are building positive relationships with students. Then if we go to advocacy, so these are our students who may, in our opinion, have a slight little attitude some days, right? It's because they are trying to advocate for themselves. Those students who are always saying, this isn't fair, I didn't like how you did such and such, and they may not have said it in the best way, right? It's because they need the words to be able to advocate for themselves, right? And so some of those things we call triggers, right? So if you click on this particular link, this is going to give you something that you can print out for your students to help them use their words. So what triggered me? So what's the problem? Let's have a one-on-one conversation, okay? And so when they're able to actually tell you what happened, you're gonna be able to better address it, right? So again, this is something you can print out, make into a poster for your classroom. And even our adults, we can start to use this as well.
I'm printing all of these out. These are so helpful.
Great, great. All right. So then we have those students who fall into the avoidance category. When it's time to do some real work, they raise their hand and ask, can I go to the bathroom? Or they do something to try to divert your attention from calling on them to read or something like that, right? And so we want to make sure that we are addressing any developmental differences due to trauma. A lot of that, like I said, because a lot of my work is dealing with students who are underserved, we have to make sure that, you know, the trauma-informed teaching and everything is a buzzword, but it's really, really important that you understand some of these aspects. So if you click on this particular link, it will show you just some things that we need to pay attention to. So if we see on the bottom here, okay, so if there is instability and they're coming from any type of chaos when they are dealing with adults, okay, this is addressing their readiness to build relationships with adults, right? If they are experiencing, like for instance, disjointed and inconsistent living, like that's for our students who are very transient or maybe homeless, things like that. If they are involved in or around drug use, if they are experiencing poor sleep hygiene, if they're involved in criminal activity, if they are part of any family that is suffering from food insecurity, things like that. You're not going to be able to get them all the way to the top where they are confident and they're achieving their goals, right? So just take some time and read through this. There are some layers of intervention there, and then looking at the underlying need for why they are avoiding that particular situation. Okay. All right, and then our last one, our students with anxiety. These are our students that are sometimes very fidgety, nervous, always asking, is this right? Is this right? Things like that, right? And so sometimes it may be a little distracting, but this is where we want to make sure that we are answering, how can we ensure that our students have what they need in the moment? And so this link is going to take you to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, okay? So I know that some of us have experience with like Bloom's taxonomy and all that good stuff, but there is a saying in education that says you must Maslow before you can Bloom, right? And so if you don't understand all these different needs, like physiological needs, if our students don't have food, water, warmth, and rest, if they don't feel secure, right? If they don't have a sense of belongingness, then they're not going to be able to reach the top where they're achieving their full potential, right? And so we just have to keep these things in mind so that when we are interacting with our students and we're trying to push them because we know that they can achieve higher results, we also want to make sure that we answer the call of how can we make sure that all of these other things, all their other needs are met, right? All right. So we want to make sure that you are coming from a place of empathy, coming from a place of curiosity when you're dealing with students. Like I said, a lot of these behaviors can grind our gears, right? But we want to make sure that we're doing and showing up as our best selves so that we're creating a positive learning environment. Because if this portion is not addressed, then like I said, it doesn't matter if you have the best lesson plan, you have a really cool lesson, right? None of that matters if you are not student-centered and you don't understand what's happening, you know, with our students, right? All right, so I hope that you found those resources to be helpful. Again, take some time to really dig into that. So when we go back and we said that we were trying to answer or asking the question of like what happened in between those years where we saw a significant change, okay? We want to look at a way to empower our students through reflection. And so I created this activity that I did with my ninth graders a few years ago. And so I will put this link in the chat. It's also in your handout. And I'm giving you the editable version so that if there's anything that you kind of want to tweak, you can do that. But I'm going to pull this up so that we can make that bigger. It's going to ask you to, if you want to make a copy of that. All right, and so students will need access to their particular graph from all of the different years. That is the best way to use this in tandem. And so the goal of this particular activity is to have the students reflect on their testing history and understand the factors that affected their past performance. Also, we want to determine specific actions that they can take to help exceed their projected scores for this year. So this activity is broken down into 3 parts. Part 1 is where they look at the past. So they are focusing on each of those data points. How did they score in since 3rd grade, for instance? Okay, they also are looking for which school that they're coming from. So we want them to take a close look at each of those data points. And there is a portion, this area for them to actually reflect on what do they remember from each school year, right? So you want to tell them, think about any major life events. What happened that during, you know, and tell them like, this is something, if you don't want to share anything that's too personal, you know, just let them know that it's okay. However, this is something that you want them to know that only you will have access to. Okay, this is not an activity where they're going to be sharing with their friends in the class and all the other stuff. This is very personal, one-on-one, so that you can get to know, again, the story behind what happened, right? We don't want to have to make any assumptions. We don't want to make our own story about what happened, especially if we know what school they were coming from, right?
I find that to be very successful with your kids. I mean, I would assume it was, but can you just tell me how your kids really responded to it when they had to do this? Because a part of me looks like it might work. I mean, it really would be helpful, but how did it work for you?
Yes. So once we got to like, I explained how this will work. And then this portion where we got to part 2, right? We want them to kind of think about, okay, what happened in the past, now what's happening now, right? And so we did this kind of in the middle of the school year, the first time. And so we wanted to make sure that they knew that the whole purpose of this activity is, number 1, so they can realize that their achievement is not necessarily a result of how much they know, their intelligence. A lot of them are very, how would I say that? They have low confidence when it comes to testing, right? They're not really good test takers and things like that. And so this particular activity helped them understand like, oh, I didn't do well this year because maybe I just moved to a different place, right? Or my parents got divorced that year, right? And that really affected me. I didn't realize it then, but that really played a part in how I scored on that particular test. Or I didn't have a teacher that year. I had a whole bunch of subs that year, right? So that made a difference. Or I didn't like Miss Such and Such. And a lot of kids make the mistake of saying, since I didn't like them, I'm not going to perform. And you have to have those conversations. I always tell my kids, it doesn't matter if you like a teacher, because your grades are your grades and they're going to follow you the rest of your life, right? And so just getting to those conversations and having them reflect was really, really powerful, right?
That's that. I think that's that higher end of the top part of what you were just showing us about self-reflection, and then being able to really own what's happened to them and be reflective that way. That's awesome. I really like this. I wish I'd had it.
And so then we get to the future, and this is where we are setting some goals here, right? So even our kids who are not in high school yet will benefit from this, but where do you see yourself after high school, right? What steps do we need to take in order to meet that goal? And then asking them, what type of support do you think you need in order to remain on track? That's really, really big. And then what actions or good habits will you commit to in order to achieve your goal? So we have to put a lot of this on them, right? And so once they do this activity and we fill in this portion here, so my percent correct goal is blank. And so once you know what that cut score is for like a level 3, so for instance, with math 1, the cut score to get a level 3 is 47%, right? And so if I know that my student is projected to be not proficient, I still want them to say, my goal is to have 47% correct. And that's not just on the EOC, but that's on every assessment, right? And we know that our day-to-day assessments, that's low, right? And so it's going to make them feel really, really good to say, I smashed this goal, right? So not only did I make a 47%, but if I got to an 80%, I'm doing really, really well, right? And so this places the ownership on them, and it just gives them more motivation to stay focused and on track for that particular class.
Well, and Ms. White, this also takes them back to I think the first slide that you, with the beginning when you were talking about achievement versus
growth.
Growth, right? I was just sitting here going, I've heard this before, because it was the first thing that you said about just the difference between achievement is different than the growth, and the growth piece is, this is more of the growth piece, because it's talking about several pieces to the puzzle.
And so one of the things that we say is, so we need to say that, of course, in order to be proficient, like in a regular test, we say maybe 80%, right? So on a unit test, we want the whole class to say, yes, I'm aiming for 80%. But looking to see where we are meeting our kids where they are, like if they have been struggling and we say, okay, you need to at least get a 47%, that gets them to at least try, right? And if you try to incentivize this and say, like, if the whole class can meet or exceed the goal, then we get a class point and we're working towards something, right? There's so many different opportunities for you to pull this in, but the main thing is that it's helping the students, again, take ownership of their learning. Yep, so this is editable. Like I said, the link there is in your handout. And so if you need to adjust it for the years, so if you're like a K-8 teacher and you don't necessarily, maybe you're teaching 6th grade and you don't need these last 2 rows, you can take those out, whatever you need to. But like I said, the best way to use this is to print it out along with a printout of their particular custom student report graph. Okay. All right. Now, there is one more thing that I would like to share. And so that is progress monitoring. So after we have done this portion where we've looked to see where our kids are projected to be, we've done the activity where we've had our kids reflect and they know what their goal is. Now, as a teacher, we want to make sure that we are tracking that, right? And so regardless of the type of data system that you may be using, you might be doing like a SchoolNet, Mastery Connect, whatever fancy system. This will give you a place where you have everything on one particular spreadsheet, and you can see a quick snapshot of how kids are progressing, right? And so this resource is editable, and then it provides directions for use and 4 tabs already created for you. So the link is in your handout, but I will also share this in the chat for you. And you can click right on that image, and it's going to ask you to make a copy. All right, so on the first tab, these are the directions, okay? Again, this is just generic. And if you want to make this a little fancier and you're really good with spreadsheets, feel free to do whatever you need to. But this is just very, very simple, ready to use as soon as tomorrow, right? So you want to take a look at the directions. There are 5 steps so that you can complete this. But here on the right, you see all of the different cut scores as of 2020 for each grade level in EOC, okay? So this is the minimum number correct, or minimum percent correct for each grade level in order to score at that particular achievement level of a 3, 4, or 5. So whichever grade you teach, if you are in high school and you have the EOC, the Math 1, Math 3, Biology, there's also English 2 on there. I know CTE has a little bit of a different system, so I'm not that well versed with CTE, but definitely contact your school level facilitator for that information. But once you do that, then we'll go over to, say for instance, our first class, okay? We want to enter in their student ID number, so I'm just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, student number, this is, name is Michelle White. That's me. And let's say my projected percentile is maybe, I'll say a 35. Okay, so let's say I'm not projected to be proficient, right? So that means that my percent correct goal, okay, and so for Math 1, it will be, we'll round that to a 47%. Okay, so I've had this conversation with my kids and they know that I need to get a 47% or better on each of the assessments for my class, right? And so if we scroll over here and say throughout time, maybe I scored on my first assessment, I almost made it and I got maybe a 45, right? Then say on the second assessment, I got a 50, right? So I'm making some improvements. So you'll see here in this blue column, the assessment average, column 4, this is giving you my average assessment, right? So let's say I blew it out of the water and I got an 80 on assessment 3, right? So I see that my assessment average is improving and I'm continuing to improve and say I got maybe an 83 on the next one, right? And so then something happened, I wasn't feeling good on this last assessment and maybe I went back down to maybe a 52, right? However, I see, even though I kind of bombed that test, this is still meeting or exceeding my percent correct goal, right? And so if you are, if your POC offers the mock EOG or EOC, and say, after all this work and I've had some interventions and I got a tutor or whatever my school had in place, and I was able to score maybe, I'll say a 40, all right? Okay, so this is giving me the fact that my assessment average is still above whatever I was projected to get, and it's still above my percent correct goal. So you have all of this data that you track throughout the year. And then once you actually get your students' scores back, then you can revisit this spreadsheet, and you'll be able to know if your students were able to grow, right? If they met or exceeded their particular projections, right? So this is just an easy tool for you to progress monitor and track all of that data. Okay. Are there any questions? Okay. Well, that concludes today's session. Thank you so much for taking the time out to be with me for my live participants. And thank you for choosing my session for my people who are at the summit. Please, please, please reach out and share any feedback about today's session. I would love to hear from you, and I definitely would love to hear your student success stories for next year. If you choose to use the resources, definitely the reflection piece. Again, that's something that day one, week one, when you're trying to build community, learn about your kids, definitely utilize that activity for them so that you can start, hit the ground running that school year, and they have taken ownership of their learning. If you need to get in touch with me for anything, any questions, clarifications, if you would like to learn more about my company, that contact information is on your handout, my website. But if you just have a quick question, you can contact me at simplifiedsolutions20@gmail.com. There, my mobile number is provided for you, and consultation hours, 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. if you want to hop on Zoom. You can also look at the website, simplifiedsolutionspd.com, and you can sign up for a free 30-minute consultation as well. So real quick, we're just going to recap that we have learned all 3 answers to our questions. We've learned what EVAAS is. We've learned the benefits and uses and how to access the scores. And then we have learned how to support our students. But remember, tell me and I forget, teach me and I may remember, but involve me and I learn. And so you definitely want to involve the students in that data tracking. So continue to have fun and enjoy the rest of your sessions. Enjoy the summit.